Hi from me, Lauren Jaffe, and welcome to another episode of Derech Eretz. As the years go by, we realize more and more how important the environment is to us. We explore this with the international organization Hazon, and we learn more about a local eco-village in Hammersdale in KwaZulu-Natal. First up, Rabbi Greg Alexander talks us through the connection between Judaism and the environment.
In the fast-paced world that we live in today, we forget that Judaism wasn't always like this. We forget that the time of the Torah, of our ancestors, of the founders of Judaism, we were wanderers in the desert. We were in touch and connected with nature. We were farmers in the land of Israel. And the Judaism that we practice today is inherited from those times. But we live in cities, and we forget that our roots go down into the ground. The Torah has an interesting mitzvah. In Devarim, in Deuteronomy, it says that if you are besieging a city, I don't know if you're planning to besiege a city, but if you're besieging a city, you should know that you can't just chop down all the fruit trees around that city, even though strategically it might be a good idea. The Torah says, no, you can't do that. That gets picked up 1,000 years later by someone called Maimonides, who says, this is not just about chopping down fruit trees in a time of war. This is about the Mitzvah of Baltashrit, of not wasting anything. Once again, Judaism is interconnected with everything in the world. Everything that we eat, everything that we buy, every action that we take has an impact in this world. And Judaism says, don't waste one thing. Now, let's think about kashrut, for example. When you go into a shop and you want to buy kosher food, you might look for the stamp on the kosher food. And you know that somebody has checked the ingredients and the process to make sure that's kosher. But what about the packaging? What about peaches that come on polystyrene bases, double wrapped with cling film? What about a synagogue that's preparing a kiddush with plastic plates and knives and forks and plastic cups and a plastic sheet over the table, and at the end of the brocha, all of that gets bagged and thrown into the bin? Now, the ingredients are kosher, but what about the mitzvah of Baltashrit? What about the care for the environment that is as much a mitzvah as checking the food that we eat? There's a midrash that imagines God walking Adam and Eve around the garden, and God looks and says, look at this beautiful space that I'm giving to you to be the guardians of. Take care of it, because this is the only one, and there will be no one after you to repair it. An important principle in Judaism, tzedek, tzedek tirdof, comes from that same book of the Torah. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. And ordinarily we think about social justice, we think about courts of law, we think about doing what is right and what is good. But this applies in the environment as well. Environment isn't just planting trees, although of course we all need to plant trees. It's realizing that the actions of the human being impact the world, and then the world impacts us. We have to act in a way that is just for every creature that inhabits this earth. Most of the worst impact of climate change is in the poorest and most vulnerable communities in the world. Most of the Jewish community finds ourselves in the most privileged parts of the world. With that privilege comes responsibility. Let's use that privilege, yet use our resources to create change for all in this world.
No matter what time of year it is, no matter what year it is, and no matter what location you're in, the environment is always going to matter so much. Today we chat to Fiona Singh and Michelle Campbell about an eco-centre based in Hammersdale, which is roughly an hour outside of central Durban. We find out exactly what the eco-centre is all about and, of course, how they run everything on top of why the environment is so important.
And this is it. This is our eco-centre.
This is beautiful. This is so amazing.
This is where all the magic happens and all the inspiration happens.
Obsessed with the jellyfish.
The Education Centre in Hammersdale was conceived as a collaboration between Durban Solid Waste, who deals with trash, the Department of Education in KZN, who obviously deal with educational curriculums on environment, and the Jewish National Fund, which wanted to bring Israeli technology and Israeli know-how to impoverished communities.
So in this three-way alliance, we run the centre. Basically, the land here and the property belongs to the Education Department. We, the employees of eThekwini, actually run the centre, and the Jewish National Fund does the funding for the centre and the projects. So it's a very exciting collaboration. We absolutely love the way this is organically grown. My role here is to make sure that the projects actually run operationally on the ground, to make sure that the centre has school students coming in, the gardens are in good condition, and at the same time to go and do outreach into communities and do community education. And that's the role of the centre, is community environmental education.
A project was sought in the Durban area to bring environmental education to communities that don't have access to that kind of education. Environmental concerns are part of the school curriculum, but a lot of children in poorer areas don't get the hands-on knowledge. They taught it as a subject, and they don't get the knowledge that helps them to apply that to their daily lives.
So when they come through, we basically have like 60 learners at a time. We subsidize the taxis that bring through the learners. And that subsidy allows those 60 children to come through to be thematically educated. So the teachers would give us guidance that this grade we have water as a theme, or we'd like to do waste as a theme. And we then split up the groups into 3 or 4, depending on how many environmental educators are here on this day. And we do a rotational aspect of education. So we either play them a game so that it's related to their age, or we talk about certain parts of waste management, try to relate it to their age group. And then we go out into the permaculture gardens and talk about how to incorporate those ideas into gardening as well. If you can look at this, you can see it in a way that...
Oh, is that a real bee? But it's obviously dead.
Yes, a dead bee in there. So it's almost like a toy microscope in some way.
Yes.
So it becomes a bit more friendly. And this obviously for the younger aged learners, they're able to see. It's called bug jar with a magnifier. There we go.
That's so sweet.
Bug jar with a magnifier.
It's clever. It's clever because it gives kids to this like, oh, I can look at it.
The concept of tikkun olam is a very central one to Jewish values, and tikkun olam means to repair the world. Repairing the world in terms of environmental education is central to the Jewish National Fund's mandate. And that was why it was important for us to bring something to the wider community that could contribute to society and fix the world.
We find there's a lot of orphanages in this community. So the community here needs a lot of support in terms of how to supplement their livelihood. So we find that teaching them how to actually grow their own food has supported their households, and this is another critical element. And we do this often, not just with orphanages, but anyone trying to create a subsistence farm that has a large tract of land, and showing them concepts of how they can use planting in a sustainable way. Yeah, so this is the Biodigester, and basically it works with the toilet system. Okay. And when you flush the toilet, the human waste goes into the system, and then in here there's these bugs that then separate out the solids and the liquids.
Delicious bugs.
and then further treated into the second and the third, and then there's a runoff water that goes on the other end here.
The municipality of Durban does have an interest in educating people to deal with waste better, because if they don't deal with their waste, the municipality has to deal with it. And by teaching people to recycle, to reuse, by teaching people where to get rid of their trash properly, it helps the municipality deal with the issues that they need to deal with. And the collaboration between ourselves as the JNF and the Department of Waste and the Education Department, it's a great partnership, because all three achieve the goals together, that their separate mandates are achieved through working together.
Having this relationship, and as Michelle always says from the JNF, that little bit of money goes such a long way, because the extension of the project has these ripple effects in the community that ultimately we get to see the joy in people's faces. For example, during COVID times, we were able to support communities that didn't have food. We were able to provide them with seeds, and we grew spinach and cabbage, and those things did provide for families that did not have any income at all. It was truly amazing, the value of the center. This is a very special relationship, and it is working so wonderfully. So we're very grateful to have this relationship. So after the human waste is treated, the clear runoff that is now treated, yes, settles in here. There is a pipe that runs off into the gardens, so it acts as a supplementary source of water.
One of the highlights that I've seen where there's been a direct impact on actual people's lives was an incident where some matrics attended a workshop at the Eco Centre on waste management, and following their final exams in geography, some of them came back to report on how much it helped them in one particularly large mark question about waste management, and they all did so well because they'd been shown and given more knowledge about the real everyday workings of waste management. And these kids were so delighted because their schools don't have the resources to give them that kind of enrichment. And it made a difference in their lives.
Bringing in different cultures and ethnic abilities, cultural perspectives, it's become this melting pot. You know, we always say South Africa is this rainbow culture and this rainbow nation. And in the center, we see how that collaborative effect of bringing in your cultural perspectives, bringing in the value systems you've learned from your home, and the practices of working with your hands have come to this culmination in this melting pot, because we bring in our expertise as the municipality, and the people that live here bring in their cultural and indigenous knowledge systems, and the Jewish National Fund brings in their wider perspective of what it is like to work in the world and plant thousands of trees. So we've brought these ideas together in a way that is very particular to this community. And because it's a rural, urban, peri-urban type of community, we have this ability to incorporate those ideas. So it's a very special kind of energy-focused and passion-driven initiative. So it's invaluable. I can't even put a value on the fact that I'm, as an educator, feel that this is education in action, and that action has results that actually lead to people living better lives. We've seen it so many times, and it's absolutely inspiring.
The Jewish National Fund originated in Israel, and as a Derech Eretz, as a central value of the Jewish National Fund, is environmental education. And for us to be able to bring that environmental education in a practical and everyday way to people who live very simple lives under very difficult conditions, very high unemployment, schools which are dreadfully under-resourced. Our Eco Centre enriches their lives, and gives them practical everyday ways in which they can make their lives better and to make their environments better.
Hazon is an international organization that cares deeply for the environment and sustainability. So much so that they are leading a transformative movement to make sure those values are present in Jewish life, not just for local community, but for the world at large. Today, we find out just a little bit more about how they go about what they do.
The word Hazon means vision, and our vision is a world that is healthy and sustainable for everyone. And as the Director of Food and Climate, my role is to help individuals in the Jewish community and the Jewish community writ large to understand the connection between their food choices and climate change, and to be inspired and empowered to make choices that are better for the earth, not to mention better for ourselves, for animals, for workers in the industry, and more. Hazon was founded in 2000, so it's been around for over 20 years now, and we do work in a lot of different areas. And one way I like to think about our work is that we impact change in 3 different ways. Through thought leadership, that includes things like creating curricula, publishing textbooks and lesson plans, and introducing just whole new ideas to the Jewish world. Another category is capacity building. This is where we build the ability of Jewish individuals, Jewish leaders, and Jewish organizations to make change. This can be through training, we have fellowship programs for young leaders, and through financial support, mini grants, and things like that. And then the other capacity is transformative experiences, immersive transformative experiences, bike rides, retreats, immersive extensive fellowship programs. And by immersive, we really mean that people change, they're transformed, they go in, it's a transformative experience, they come out of it different than when they started. And that difference is that they're more connected Jewishly, and they are more connected to this earth that supports us. Judaism doesn't have a monopoly on values that make us feel connected to the earth, but Judaism does have its own legitimate values, tradition, history that does connect us to the land, to harvest, to seasons, to locales, and to care for those around us and ourselves. Brit Hazon is an opportunity that Hazon offers to individuals that want to make change in their lives to help the world be a better place, to make sure that their personal actions are more aligned with a healthy planet. And the word Brit means covenant. There are 6 commitments that people can choose from. And a couple of examples are saying, like, I will reduce the amount of food I waste. So I will make a 6-week commitment to reduce the amount of food I waste. So you sign up to do that. But how do you do that? Well, we don't want to just leave it to like, oh, okay, I threw away one last thing, I did it, yay. So we provide 6 specific actions that you can take to reduce your food waste. And then we have 6 actions, and you can pick 1, 2, or 3 of those to commit to during that 6-week period. After you sign up, you'll get a series of emails through that 6 weeks that give you relevant Jewish teachings, give you tips, resources, a sense of community around others who are making similar commitments like this to change. And our hope is that at the end of 6 weeks, you've learned a lot and that you've made a behavior change that might stick. And so then people can hopefully continue with that behavior, and then they can come back and sign up again. And instead of reducing food waste, you can commit to reducing your energy use. You could commit to experimenting with a plant-rich diet. Those are a couple of the other commitments. And so we've got hundreds, and we hope eventually thousands of people who are signing up for this program and sharing with us that it's really helping them and inspiring them to make a difference. So Shmita is commonly known as the Sabbatical Year, and the word Shmita itself literally means like release. It is of biblical origin, and it's the final year of a 7-year calendar cycle. And this is actually the Shmita year. And during that year, land is left fallow, debts are forgiven, and a variety of other agricultural and economic adjustments are made to ensure the maintenance of an equitable, just, and healthy society. Hazon thinks that this ancient cycle and its teachings are incredibly relevant and valuable to our times today. So we created something called the Shmita Project. And the Shmita Project, its goal is to significantly raise awareness of the concept of Shmita in Jewish tradition, which include things like focusing on environmental sustainability, cycles of rest and work, debt and debt relief, and exploring our relationship to land, to food, and to time. One of our taglines at Hazon is, we're in a climate crisis and Jewish tradition compels us to respond. And what are the things that compel us to respond? You know, there's samples of like saying things like tikkun olam. We have a tradition and teaching of healing the earth. Another one is Baltashrit, not to waste. And it comes from the Torah, and over centuries, rabbis and in contemporary leaders say, what does that mean in our time? And that's a lot of what Hazon is about. And so we are saying it is normal for us as a faith, as a people, to say in today's times, with what is happening in the world now, in a world where can be genetic modification, in a world where a pineapple can fly from thousands of miles away to get to my grocery store, in a world where animals are crammed into horrific conditions, what does it mean to apply Jewish values there? And trying to have a conversation about what does it mean in light of today's world to apply these values. And it's how we live our lives. For me this morning to have chosen to put this on rather than go and turn up the thermostat was a Jewish act. The Derech Eretz for Hazon is that everything Hazon does is to connect people more deeply to the earth that sustains us.
Well, we've come to the end of the show for this week's episode of Derech Eretz. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a Facebook message on Derech Eretz Connect. From me, Lauren Jaffe, and the Derech Eretz team, have a beautiful week.